Alright, let's kick off with one of my favourite bits of nonsense in incident investigations. The old question, was it behaviour or was it environment? As if the job is some sort of custody battle and we've got to hand the incident to one parent. Behaviour gets the blame, environment gets the excuse, everyone goes home feeling clever, and absolutely bugger all gets fixed. Here's the problem. That question is usually framed badly from the start. Because people do not act in a vacuum. They act inside conditions, inside workload, inside layout, inside supervision, inside time pressure, inside whatever bit of organisational weirdness was considered normal right up until someone got hurt. ICAM got respected for exactly this reason. When it's used properly, it moves us beyond the worker stuffed up and into what was going on around them, before them, and underneath the job. Same deal with a decent 5 whys approach. You ask why the act happened, then why that condition existed, then why that was allowed to continue. You keep digging until you hit a point of control, not a point of convenience. I've seen this 1,000 times. Bloke steps into the line of fire, machine moves, near miss or injury. Report says, worker failed to maintain awareness. Beautiful, lovely sentence. Sounds official. Means nothing on its own. Why was awareness degraded? Noise? Congestion? Poor line of sight? No exclusion zone? 2 tasks happening in the same patch? Supervisor missing in action? Procedure vague as fog? If not, why not? And that's where investigators often miss the blind spots. They see the final act and stop there because acts are visible. Conditions are a bit harder. Organisational factors harder again. But harder is not optional. Harder is the job. There's a line that runs through all the good investigation material. Gather facts, organise them, analyse them, learn from them. People, environment, equipment, procedures, organisation. PEOP. Not just person, not just operator, the whole system of work. Brainstorm the data sources first, then go collect them. Cross-check them. Work out what's contributing and what's just background noise. And while we're at it, stop treating behaviour and environment like they're separate planets. They're glued together. A worker's decision makes sense, or at least becomes understandable, in the context they were operating in. That doesn't remove accountability, it just stops us being lazy. If your investigation ends with human error, and no decent explanation of why the human was set up to err, congratulations, you've written fiction. Short fiction too, which is nice for the reader, useless for the next poor bastard doing the task. So, Chapter 1 takeaway? Don't ask behaviour or environment. Ask, what did the person do? What conditions shaped that? And what in the organisation allowed those conditions to exist? That's a systems question. That's where the learning lives. Now, behaviour does matter. Of course it does. But behaviour is evidence, not the verdict. When you classify the type of action properly, it tells you where to look next. Take slips. That's usually attention failures, distraction, poor vigilance. Someone grabs the wrong control, steps into the wrong area, misses the obvious because their attention got split. So what are slips often telling you? Maybe the task was cluttered. Maybe the layout was rubbish. Maybe alarms, noise, radio chatter, people walking through all at once. Maybe they were interrupted mid-task. You don't fix a slip by wagging a finger and writing, "Be more careful" in 14-point Calibri. Lapses are different. Memory failures, losing place, forgetting a step, omitting something. If someone forgets to isolate, forgets to refit a guard, forgets to close out a check, that can point you toward interruptions, poor prompts, bad sequencing, unrealistic workload, or procedures that rely too much on memory and not enough on design. Checklists, reminders, and proper workflow matter here. Memory is not a control, it's a gamble. Mistakes. That's where the plan itself was wrong. Rule-based mistakes happen when someone applies the wrong rule to a situation they think they recognize. Knowledge-based mistakes show up when the situation is novel and they're basically thinking on the run with not enough training or experience. So if a worker does something believing it's correct, don't write them off as careless. Ask what training they had, what information they were given, whether the procedure was clear, and whether the job drifted away from what was intended. Then we get to violations. Everyone loves a violation because it feels morally tidy. Aha! Gotcha! But even violations come in flavors. Routine violations are often just how the job is really done. Situational violations crop up when time, resources, or conditions make compliance awkward or impossible. Personal optimizing is convenience. Organisational optimizing is the really spicy one. When production, service, or commercial goals quietly override safety goals. Exceptional and reckless violations exist too, sure, but they're not your first assumption. I remember investigation examples from the training material where people were working without the proper risk assessment, or a driver didn't attend a mandatory pre-start, or a grader operator reversed without a spotter. On the surface, that's behaviour. Underneath though, unclear scope, weak supervision, tolerated shortcuts, poor communication, missing hazard identification, no effective process to stop the drift. Behaviour reflecting system design. There it is. Same with time pressure. If workers are rushing because the workshop's full, the deadline's stupid, the spare vehicle's unavailable, or the site's behind schedule, don't act shocked when a shortcut appears. That shortcut may still be a violation, but the pressure around it is a task or environment condition, and the reason that pressure existed is probably organisational. So when you see behaviour, don't just label it, use it. Slip, lapse, mistake, violation. Each one is a clue. Each points you toward different influences. Task demands, environment, supervision, procedures, controls, training, communication, planning. Good investigators don't stop at the act. They ask what the act is trying to tell them. Now let's talk about environment, because plenty of people hear that word and think weather, rain, heat, wind, bit of dust, job done. Nah, environment is much broader than that. Physical conditions, yes. Lighting, noise, surface conditions, congestion, visibility, but also equipment state, access, layout, procedures in use, and the organisational pressures hanging over the task like a storm cloud nobody put in the forecast. The investigation guides are crystal clear on this stuff. Environment includes illumination, contaminants, noise, temperature, work surface, visibility, all that physical gear. Equipment includes condition, design, maintenance, modifications, whether it was fit for purpose. Procedures includes whether the process existed, whether it covered the whole job, whether it was current, understandable, and actually used. Organisation includes communication, training, supervision, planning, contractor management, risk management, change management, learning, the big levers. That matters because the same person can behave very differently in different conditions. Put a competent worker in a clean layout, clear procedure, decent lighting, proper supervision, realistic time, solid barriers, and watch how boringly safe they become. Put that same worker in a cramped area with poor visibility, no spotter, vague instructions, competing tasks, and a boss muttering about deadlines. Suddenly, everyone wants to talk about behaviour like it fell from the bloody moon. Look at some of the examples in the SafetyWise material. Wet gravel road, bend, windrow, no active feedback on speed, informal journey management, road condition alerts not distributed in time, previous rollover actions not closed out. Same driver, different system, very different risk picture. Or the level crossing case, sun glare, trees masking the line, bend in the approach, non-standard induction loop, remote control with poor feedback, accepted practice creeping away from procedure. Again, behaviour is in there, but environment is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And that's the practical takeaway for safety leaders and investigators. Investigate both the act and the conditions that made the act likely. Not just possible, likely. Gather broadly, use PIPO, build the timeline, separate contributing from non-contributing facts. Then ask your whys properly. What happened? Why did it happen? What are we going to do about it? What did we learn that we can share? If you only investigate the act, you get blame. If you investigate the conditions too, you get prevention. And prevention, last I checked, is the point. So next time someone says, was it behaviour or environment? Do me a favour. Have a sip of coffee, take a breath, and say, mate, behaviour happens in an environment. Let's investigate like grown-ups. That's Cam's Corner for this one. We'll keep poking the sacred cows next episode. Until then, if your report ends at the person, don't call it an investigation. Call it a guess with a logo on it.